Hi everyone. Today we have Dr. Parthas Vasati here from California, and he's going to talk about dermoscopy and some of the applications that we are working with him through a Research ND grant. I've known him since 2005. We did our PhD together in the same school in Vancouver, Canada, and he has been working on different applications of optical imaging since then. And he has been involved as a founder and also technology officer in different companies that he's going to talk about. And he's in North Dakota hoping that we can work together towards starting a venture here in North Dakota.
Thank you very much, Kuyar. Thank you everybody for attending my talk. Hopefully you found it useful and interesting. So basically, I would like to just give you an overview of the ventures that I'm involved in Los Angeles and Vancouver. The major one is spectral molecular imaging. We are developing high-resolution hyperspectral imaging for early and accurate diagnosis of cancer and other major diseases. About 4 years ago, we started founding eTreat Medical Diagnostics in Vancouver, Canada. We are developing mobile application for improving patient self-management, living with the chronic diseases. I'm going to go in more detail later on. About a year ago, we started Safety Spec initiatives, which is looking at the food contaminants, food quality, and food defense application. So it uses the multimode optical imaging. The core of the technology is similar to SMI, but it's in the food space. And the last but not least is the Brain Window company, which we are developing a multimode confocal ophthalmoscope, looking at the retina. To diagnosis of a neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer, traumatic brain injury, and so forth. That's why the company name is Brain Window, because the only window through the brain tissue is retina, that you can access it through the eye. So at SMI, we are developing a SkinSpect. This is our first product. It's a multimode hyperspectral imaging design for the accurate diagnosis of the skin cancer. We have started with looking at the melanoma lesions because melanoma is the deadliest skin cancer condition, and it has a huge expenses on the health system. Basically, every hour, one person in the United States will die from melanoma. And if it detected earlier, the treatment cost would be significantly lower until it catches the later stage. So in melanoma, basically the key parameters that the clinicians are interested to know and quantify, and their preferences are non-invasively before scooping out and doing some pathological analysis, is the melanin concentration and the depth of the melanin. As you see here, when the melanoma stages goes worse, these melanin penetrate vertically down to the dermis, and basically that's become invasive. So this melanoma distribute to the blood system, and even when they remove the whole melanoma lesion, I mean, it comes out from other part. For example, they can grow in the brain and so forth. So it's a key for us to quantify distribution of melanin and also the depth, how much depth this melanin penetrates. So right now in the market, there are some companies that making melanoma detection devices. We group them as a black box approach and biological approach. On the black box approach, actually, they are measuring lesions, and based on the biopsy results, they put them on the melanoma or non-melanoma category. And they start to trade the system as a black box. So usually, as you see here, I give you two examples, Melafine and Versante. They have an extremely good performance in the smaller trials because they are training their artificial intelligence based on that population. But when they go to the larger trials, their specificity goes drastically down. For example, from 85% goes to 9%. And from 70% for Versante went to 15%. And the problem is that even for the current practice, the specificity is 3%. So every 30 biopsies, 29 of them is non-melanoma. So they kind of trick it and said, this is the atypical melanoma or benign. They try to, basically just tell that this is not a melanoma, but it is something abnormal. So the second approach that SkinSpec and we like to pursue is the biological model. So basically what we want to do, we want to measure the skin non-invasively and extract the information that is cause of the melanoma or the biomarkers of the melanoma, like melanin distribution, melanin depth, oxy and deoxyhemoglobin. But it is very hard because for melanoma, you're talking about the very high melanocytic lesion. So at the top layer, the absorption for the melanoma is basically taking over the whole thing that is happening down there in the epidermis. So it's challenging to disentangle the absorption from melanin and the absorption of hemoglobin or the other biomarkers like collagen. That's why lots of the previous work in research and also in commercialized devices like cystoscopy, they couldn't disentangle these two absorption, and they show some unusual results. For example, for African American subjects, the oxygenation of blood is lower, or for lesions with perfectly normal mole, they have a high rate of hemoglobin contrast. So this is basically this, we call it crosstalk between the absorption of the melanin and hemoglobin. And why hemoglobin is important? Because tumor needs food, needs oxygen, needs blood. So you need to look at the vasculature on the tumor. And especially if you are monitoring a progression of melanoma, you want to see, if a lesion is suspicious, but you don't want to touch it, but you want to see it 6 months later, you want to see how this vasculature changed during this 6 months to then order for the biopsy. So this is the diagram of our device, SkinSpec. Basically, we have a spectral illumination source. Here, this is basically a DMD, which is the micromirror chip that used on that spectral device. So based on which column of these DMD is on and off, you select different wavelengths. And when you select the different wavelengths, you illuminate it through the fiber optic to the skin, and you take an image. Then next wavelength, next wavelength. So then you're collecting the hyperspectral data cube for the skin measurements. Also, we are using fluorescence imaging. So we have LEDs at 420 nanometer. They are for the purpose of the quantifying collagen crosslinks in the skin. And also the last mode that we are using is a polarization imaging. So when the light is polarized and hits the skin, the light that is reflect back from the surface or the superficial layer, they maintain their polarization. But the light that diffuse there, it has a random polarization. So basically by detecting light in the parallel polarization or cross polarization, you can have some sort of a depth sensitivity of superficial or deeper layer of the skin. So by putting these three modes together, hyperspectral imaging, polarization imaging, and the fluorescence imaging, we build a suite to more accurately quantify the melanin, oxy and deoxyhemoglobin, and the collagen content of the skin. So this is a first proof of concept that we published in 2014. So as you see here, this is a normal mole. So this is the melanin concentration that we extract from the skin speck. And there's two columns here. So the left column is the oxy and deoxyhemoglobin without melanin absorption correction. And the right one is with melanin absorption correction. As you see here, if you don't have that correction, you always see higher amount of blood below the mole, which is not true. This is not physiologically basically true. We also test our algorithm on the occlusion test. So basically, we image the subject finger. We just put a cuff on the finger for a few minutes. So when you put a cuff there, the blood gets in but cannot get out. So the total hemoglobin goes up, the oxygenation goes up, and the oxygenation level goes down. And when you release it, it goes back to the normal. So this is a patch of, a region of interest on the skin, on the finger, and the middle one is during the occlusion. This is pre-occlusion, and this is the post-occlusion. And as you see here, the total melanin concentration goes up, the oxygenation level goes down. This is basically an example that higher melanin but constant oxy and deoxyhemoglobin. Another set of experiment is variation on the hemoglobin but constant melanin concentration. So what a skin speck provides to clinician is a deep melanin. So we have a superficial melanin, total melanin, and deep melanin. And these deep melanin actually can be diagnostically useful for the melanoma. I can give you some examples. So we have started a clinical trial in Memorial Sloan Kettering, is a cancer center in New York, under NIH, NCI, SBIR phase 1 and phase 2 grant. And we actually look at the lesion with conventional dermoscopy, skin speck, and also reflectance confocal microscopy. So this is Ashfaq Margoob, is the world-class dermoscopist and expert in melanoma. And this is basically the confocal microscope. The confocal microscope basically is a microscope. It's a super high resolution 3D image of the skin that they are using to detect melanoma and non-melanoma skin cancer. The resolution is phenomenal. The only problem is that, as you see here, in order to cover the whole lesion, the field of view is 5 millimeter by 0.5 millimeter by 0.5 millimeter. Then you have to mosaic these regions in order to get the full image of the lesion. So it will take 20 to 30 minutes for the operator to actually take this huge amount of 3D stack of the data. And as you will see later, the resolution, as you see here, you can see cells. But the problem is that the time for acquiring these images it's very expensive. And also for the person to review this result, it takes time, and it needs a super basically experienced person to extract useful information from confocal microscope. This is one of the melanoma cases that we had. Is a 50-year-old female, and this is an invasive malignant melanoma, as you see here. So this is basically what a skin speck can provide. This is the total melanin concentration. This is the deep melanin concentration. You see these bright spots on the deep melanin concentration. They follow the structure of the total melanin. That shows that there are lots of deeper melanin concentration in this lesion. Also, this is the total hemoglobin and oxygenation map. And these are like three absorption spectra in different regions. The normal, peripheral, the border, and at the core of the lesion. As you see, this amount of absorption is basically our sensitivity limit. So pretty much we don't get any photon out. It's that much absorption here. So we can basically get the total attenuation spectra, superficial attenuation spectra by working with the parallel and cross polarization measurement. And these are basically some pathological analysis. So the Breslau thickness is 0.6 millimeter. I'm not going too deep into this, but I just want to show you that what are the competitors for this device. It is super sensitive, high resolution, but pretty much is not practical to, I mean, Memorial Sloan Kettering can afford to have this machine, can afford to have a person to work with this and, you know, give it, but not every clinician afford the personnel and the machine to have it in their device. So what is their idea is that they use a skin spec for more macroscopic analysis of the skin, and then basically for the very high interest regions, they look at the confocal microscopy. As you see here, these bright spots in the different layers has some correlates to basically a portion of the in the pathological analysis, and these are not easy to extract. So these are highly trained people needs to actually extract this information. This is basically an example of deep melanin and total melanin in three different stages of melanoma basically. So the right one is the benign tissue. The middle one is the melanoma in situ, where the melanin hasn't penetrated to the dermis. It is on the top layer of epidermis yet. And this is the invasive melanoma. And as you see here, for the deep melanin compared to total melanin, you see a direct correlation to the shape of the lesion and the boundary in the deep melanin map compared to the total melanin map. You will see the same correlation in the melanoma in situ, but in the benign lesion, you don't have any trace of the deep melanin concentration in the deep melanin map. Also, this is showing the skin spec power, how we detect this total hemoglobin. This is when the melanin absorption is corrected, and this is when it's not corrected. So basically all these oxygenation and hemoglobin detection is crosstalk with the melanin absorption. So our vision is that to have some sort of a cheaper version of the skin spec, smaller and portable version of a skin spec for rural area, for remote area, for basically military bases somewhere in a far area, or maybe at home. So the people with the high risk of melanoma, they can constantly take their picture, and that picture is not just a picture. You can extract a little bit of melanin and deoxyhemoglobin and transfer it to the dermatologist. And if an alarm happens, then the GP will refer it to the dermatologist. Dermatologist has a better look with the big machine, skin spec machine, and if surgery needed or biopsy needed, it will do it. So this is basically a pyramid of how a patient, a GP, dermatologist, and the plastic surgeon probably have to be in connection through the telehealth and telemedicine platform. I mean, usually these skin cancers are in the neck or in the face, so you don't want dermatologists to actually take biggest scoop out of that. You want a plastic surgeon, a nice trained surgeon to do this for you because of the obvious cosmetic thing. So now I'm jumping from spectral molecular imaging activities to eTreatMD. This is the mobile app company that I found with 3 other colleagues in Vancouver about 3-4 years ago. And we focus on the basically chronic disease management. We start with the arthritis because this chronic disease doesn't kill you, but it will reduce the activity, daily activity, and usually these are neglected with the health system. So you're pretty much ended up with just painkiller or some activity. So there is no active monitoring of your chronic condition. So if the patient can empower the patient to track the symptoms, track what is work for him, is that the treatment work for him, is that the activity work for him, weather conditions. So our app can actually gather all these data and provide that patient a personalized medicine or personalized treatment recipe to cope with the chronic condition. So that app will come with some sort of a web platform that the doctors can use that to track the symptoms, to track the relationship between the pain and activities, diets, and so forth. We also have some sort of an image processing flavor in this hand arthritis app. So basically the patient can put his hand on the piece of paper, letter size. So the algorithm is smart, is looking at the corner of the paper, identify the distance of the camera, the angle of the camera, and corrects it all. So you're gonna have a real dimension on the hand. And then it start to do anatomical analysis. Does the joint has swelling? Does the joint has some kind of deformity? So these can be all automatically detected and scored. So this is something that we are working on that, and we expanded to the food problems. As you see here, it's very challenging because of the background, the type of background, and the food anatomy. But we can detect this border of the food, the arch height, the angle orientation, and the Bayesian kind of problems in the food. So it's very fascinating. And also we are working on a new product on the acne detection. So basically the user take a picture, a selfie, and you detect the pupil of the eye and top of the lips, and these 3 points is basically help you to register the face on the longitudinal basis. So the person can take a picture a few days later, and all these area of the face will overlap to each other, and it will basically help you to see if your treatment is working for the chronic acne condition. So I will jump to the next company. So this company is called SafetySpec. We have used this multimode optical imaging concept. Our president, Ken Barton, become very interested in the food contamination, food quality, and food defense application. And we know that these optical techniques can be very useful on bacteria detection, pathogen detection. It's fast, rapid, is much more, it will be much better tool compared to the classical PCR, ELISA, kind of technologies, mass spectroscopy technologies. So basically, this is a slide that talks in one page what is the company vision and what we would like to do, what is the market potential, and what is the existing technologies that it is in the food safety, food quality, and food defense application. So we have started, it's the same concept as the SMI. We start with a Cadillac version of our imaging system. This is a tabletop system, as you see here. It has 3 LED rings. One of them is the white LED. The other 2 is the blue and UV LED. And the camera is a spectral camera. So it actually acquired a hyperspectral image in both reflection and the fluorescence mode. So we have access to the huge image data cube for analyzing the food samples. And the idea is that based on the specific application, for example, detecting salmonella in chicken, E. coli in lettuce, anthrax in water, and so forth, we figured out which wavelengths, which modes of operation is useful, and then we shrink it down to the handheld concept, the handheld imaging with just a couple of LEDs in different colors. So that's the idea behind safety aspect. The last company that I want to talk to you is the brain window for early detection of Alzheimer's disease. So basically, Alzheimer is a huge problem. Huge problem. In the 2030, it's going to be $2 trillion global cost of the Alzheimer. For US, it can cripple the whole health system, the Alzheimer and in general dementia condition. So right now there is no cure about Alzheimer, and from about 140 drugs, 139 of them is failed. And the problem is that they want to reverse something which is not reversible. So it's already, the damage is done. You cannot actually bring it back. The only issue, the one issue that we have understand is that there is no non-invasive early diagnosis or early detection of the Alzheimer. That's why we were thinking of how with the optical imaging we can look at the biomarkers of the Alzheimer disease. One of the biomarkers is beta amyloid plaques. So these protein fragments actually aggregate in the brain, and these are like a stopper between the neurons that talking to each other. And when they get more and bigger, that will cause the neuro damage in the brain. So there is no optical method, high resolution with a high sensitivity, that you can look at the brain because of the skin and the skull. So it's impossible. The only neuro tissue that you can have access to that through the light is the retina of the eye. The retina has the same neuro tissue. It has neurons. It has all the biology of the brain tissue. So our focus is to look at the retina, to look at the biomarkers for the Alzheimer. And we are thinking that basically this is the current clinical infection point. So basically this is the time that basically the memory losses start to kick off. And if we can detect these Alzheimer biomarkers 15 or 20 years before the memory losses start to happen, that's going to be changing a lot of clinical paradigm in Alzheimer management. If we can classify this patient based on this biomarker, if you are a high risk or not, just changing in their lifestyle, the diet, the activity, it will change their Alzheimer risk quite significantly. So this is the system that we are trying to work in the brain window. It's a multi-mode hyperspectral retinal scanner. This device has two elements that is patented technology with our, with our company. First one is a quad galvo system. So for confocal ophthalmoscope that we are building, one thing is to have to scan the laser in the retina in the wide angle. And for that, classically, they're using two galvo mirrors that is rotating and a scanning lens that will scan the laser light into the retina. So now we are substituting that to the 4 galvos, and we remove the scanning lens. The scanning lens is one of the problem for the ophthalmoscope if you want to detect biomarkers in different wavelengths, because they are very specific to the wavelengths. For example, Leica spent millions of dollars to design this scanning lens. And if you change the wavelength, that scanning lens is gone. It's not useful. So this is basically the 4 galvo system. This is our scanning approach. And I can show you basically the video of how that works. So with these 4 galvo, you can basically do the pivot point of your scanning anywhere on the 3D space with much larger angular deviation. And the second part is our detection. So we have patented technology to change these photodiodes with some parametric amplifier to have a photomultiplier sensitivity. So these are basically the summary of the work I'm doing. And I would like to also thank our collaborators, Caltech, NIH, Cedars-Sinai, Memorial Sloan Kettering, JPL, and University of North Dakota. Thank you very much.